I see the way that you treat her. I see how you you boss the family around. Then I'm like, I don't want you as my mom. I don't want I want to find some other mommy.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of We Need to Talk. I'm Krish, this is Elisha, that's Astley, and that's Xuan. And today we need to talk about...
Are toxic parents a dating red flag? Okay, I'm bringing this up because recently one of our Asian writers wrote a piece about an Indonesian woman who went to have a meal with her prospective mother-in-law. And I think she was very upset with the fact that the mother kind of told her to wash the dishes after the meal was over. And she took to social media and she started to go and tell people that, oh, I'm gonna break up with the guy. Cause that's a big thing for me. Like, why is she asking me to go and wash the dishes?
I feel like actually it's the girlfriend that's toxic. Plot twist.
Plot twist,
Yeah, I feel like to break up with the guy because you are asked to wash dishes is a pretty toxic thing.
Okay, what is toxic? What's a toxic thing? What does it mean to be a toxic person?
I think there are a lot of toxic traits for parents. I think it's about identifying toxic behaviors, right? I think it's hard to say someone is toxic, right? I feel like people have toxic behaviors and toxic traits, but to say that they're toxic is quite a strong thing to say, you know?
I feel like toxic is a trendy word nowadays that people just like throw around, like that's toxic, you're toxic, but nobody really pinned down like a definition of what's toxic. Like what does it mean? So what does it mean to all of you?
I saw a really interesting flowchart on TikTok, and it was a person who was explaining this situation where their mother-in-law had sent their children, so the grandchildren, Christmas presents, even though this grandmother had already been cut out of the family's lives for being toxic. Okay. And she decided not to give the Christmas presents to the kids, and she explained why. And she was like, oh, I'm gonna get a lot of comments like, oh, like you're not allowing the grandmother to love the grandchildren, or like she's just trying to change, she's trying to show that like, you know, she's doing her best, she like bought them Christmas presents. But the woman was like, no, this is the cycle of toxic people. And so the flowchart explained that toxic people are people who go through these 4 stages. And it starts with rage, and they're like controlling and overbearing, like kind of what you were saying. And then they calm down, and then there's like a period of calmness, and then they go back to love bombing. So that's the gift giving, because they're trying to like win you back. And then I think does it go back to rage?
It's a cycle. It's a never-ending cycle. That just
Yeah, it was a
continues,
cycle.
right?
Yeah.
If it's a cycle, we'll look back to the first thing. So the first thing
Yeah.
is controlling you,
Yeah.
essentially.
So I wonder in that part 2, right, is there a moment of reflection where they're like, is what I'm doing toxic? I guess there is, right?
No, there isn't. That's why they're toxic people.
Because they don't be, they know.
Because they get stuck in the loop.
So toxic people are toxic because they don't recognize their toxic behaviors.
I think people who are toxic tend not to recognize their toxic behavior. I mean, that's why they are kind of stuck in that sort of situation, right? Yeah. No, but you think that is the daughter and the potential daughter-in-law that was the toxic person?
Yeah, I think so.
Not the mother for asking to wash the dishes.
No, not at all.
So you don't think the mother's a toxic parent?
I don't think so at all. I mean, okay, look, I don't know what the context of that conversation between the
we don't
daughter
know
and
the
the mother
context.
was, right?
That's what I was gonna
I
say.
feel like if she forced the daughter, if it was like an ultimatum, you wash the dishes or you break up with my son, then I feel like, okay, maybe that's a bit intense. Like, that could be a bit toxic. But if you just like wash it, like every time she comes over, the mom's like, okay, wash the dishes, and the daughter's like, wow, I can't believe she's making me wash the dishes. I think that's toxic.
Is there a difference between toxic parenting and like the mother being a toxic in-law? You know what I'm trying to say? Because she could love the son to bits, you know, like really like treat him like she's the best mother ever. But she just happens to be a very toxic mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So do you guys think that a toxic parenting or toxic in-law is more of a red flag?
I think it bleeds, right? Like that being a toxic parent bleeds into the way you are as an in-law, so
I agree.
eventually, right, over time. But more of a red flag, I guess for me, would be in-law.
The in-law, right?
Yeah. How come? Because then toxic parent is you guys settle. It's your problem. But toxic in-law is then it becomes my problem already. So I feel like that's more of a red flag.
I feel like if I like, let's say I start dating somebody, right, and I find out that their parents are like, you know, toxic. Okay, we'll figure out what toxic means later, right? Yeah. But like to me, I would kind of feel like that's a red flag, because if your parent is toxic and they raised you.
But you think they're toxic, or your partner thinks they're toxic?
If I just started dating them, I don't really know them very, very well yet, right? So all I know is just how you are like, what you want to portray to me. But then when I see your parents, I know, oh, that's the sort of like environment that you were brought up in. And even though I might not immediately be like, okay, no, let's break up. I will feel a little bit like, I gotta keep an eye out for like, if your mom's a compulsive liar, then do you also compulsively lie? So to me, that kind of is a little bit of a red flag. Not like a huge one, but it is a bit of a red flag.
I feel like if you're able to talk about it, then you're able to talk about that toxicity and identify like, okay, your mother's a compulsive liar, and then are you a compulsive liar? And if you are, is that something that we can work through together?
Bro, a compulsive liar won't tell you that they're a compulsive liar.
Let's talk about like other traits. Like if your mother is an overthinker and like is anxious about everything, then like that mom pins it on to the rest of the family to be responsible for her overthinking. And then she got that trait from her mother. So then it becomes like toxic parenting, right? Don't you agree? It's like generational.
I don't think we can blame the previous generations because our generation, as every generation before us, but especially our generation, we have been so lucky with how much more education there is around mental health and being kind, and we have better access to therapy, and the internet is such a resource for things like that. And I think like, yeah, maybe your mom was overbearing and your mom's mom was overbearing, but like I don't feel like that is an excuse to be overbearing and not educate yourself or want to be a better person.
How do you differentiate between like maybe values that are just a bit more traditional with like toxicity? Like for example, in the article, right, the mother wanted this prospective daughter-in-law to wash the dishes. Like you said, it's the context, right? Like it's not toxic if she just feels like that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But it only gets toxic if she's overbearing about it, if she starts getting controlling about it, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's just a person who kind of has a very traditional mindset about like gender roles. To her, women should wash the dishes, whereas men shouldn't be washing the dishes. But it doesn't kind of steer into toxic unless like I think certain kind of things happen, right? So I was looking into this, right, and I realized that like toxicity, like we throw it around very often, but actually it generally refers to people that don't really know how to set boundaries, and they are a little bit, they tend to kind of control other people. Like I had this friend from when I was in JC, and she broke up with this guy because she realized that he was a total mummy's boy. He would cancel on her last minute because the mother suddenly say, oh, we're gonna go overseas. Or like they would make plans in advance, and then like the mom would just come in and be like, hey boy, you wanna go shopping today? And then he would just follow his mom. So I think I feel like a lot of people feel like whenever there's a toxic parent in the mix, the partner must be the one to insulate the relationship from the toxic family, right? And like, I guess in situations like mummy's boys, no lah, you can't count on them to insulate jack. They will side with their mum lah.
So I guess what's the difference between wanting to respect your parents, right, and the sense of like filial piety when you're dealing with toxicity, right? I do this because like sometimes they don't know they're being toxic. Maybe this overbearingness, this control, it's also from a place of love, right? I wonder, right? I control you, I want you to stay at home because I love you, I care for you. Another toxic trait I find is when parents really push their child to do one thing. Like, let's say I want to be an artist, but no, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. I think that's also quite a toxic trait, right? But how much of that comes from, I just want you to have a good life. And this is my idea of what a good life looks like.
So what would you do if, let's say, your partner came and told you one day, hey, I think that your mom is really toxic because she keeps telling us what we should be doing or when we should BTO?
Then I feel like it's about having a conversation with the mother, right? It's about all of us having a conversation together, no?
No.
You don't think so?
All of us?
I think it's a conversation between the partners.
Yeah.
But her problem has to do with you also, what? My mother is telling us to BTO at a certain time.
Yeah, and your wife don't like the fact that your mother is getting involved in your relationship so much lah.
Yeah.
And to her,
So
it's
then
like,
why would you involve her? Like give her the voice to...
I guess if I was thinking, I misheard the question. I thought you were saying if my partner's parent said, I would like to get involved in that conversation. Because for me, it's about us. So I would want to be in part of that conversation.
No. Your partner's calling your mother out for being toxic. I feel like it's damn tricky because like, on one hand, you want to be filial to your parents, right? Because you know that like filial piety is an important thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to stand with your partner, right? Like you guys are like a team.
Okay, I feel like filial piety doesn't mean like always agreeing with your parents. This is something I learned from my brother. So like my brother recently got married, and my brother is like a really family-oriented person, like much more than me. And doesn't mean that he agrees with my mother all the time. What he does, I learned from him, is that when my mother brings up something that he doesn't agree with, or something about his marriage arrangement or whatever, then he sits my mother down and have a conversation with her without involving my sister-in-law. Or he sits the whole family down, which is like my father, my mother, me and him, and the four of us, we talk about it. To me, that's filial piety, because you're not just like outrightly fighting with the mother and disagreeing and saying that you're toxic, this is my marriage, blah, 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 blah. It's okay, you have your values, but these are my values. Let's have a conversation. Let's reach a conclusion and compromise. And then after it's still being filial, but it's also standing in solidarity with my sister-in-law. But I guess I also understand that some people may not be privileged in the sense like their partner is also tender in bringing up certain issues. Like they may be like hot-tempered also, and then the whole family discussion becomes a fight. So that's hard to communicate, I guess.
I was actually going to bring up something that my therapist told me about that I think is really interesting, which is that the dynamic between like a child and a parent is such that the parent gets to set the boundaries.
Right.
Because when you're a baby, like what are you going to do? Set a boundary? Like you don't know what's going on. Like this is the person you trust with your whole life. So when your parent tells you this is how it is and this is how I get to treat you, this is how we behave in this family and these are the set of rules, you just accept it because you don't know anything else. But then when you start a relationship, that's an equal partnership. So those boundaries you get to set together. And so it's very important to differentiate the boundaries you have with your parents and not let them be the same boundaries that you set for the ones that you have with your partner.
Like I think whenever I bring up the topic of therapy, like with my parents, they immediately look at me like, "Why you siao ah? You must go see doctor."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or like,
so
oh, that's like something you young people made up, you know, like, like it's a new thing.
I think until now my dad still don't believe that depression is a thing. Yeah, I think until now he still think depression means you're weak. That's it. It means you're weak. And I kind of get what he's saying though.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand why the older generation thinks that way, 100%.
Yeah, because they were educated in a different way than we were educated.
And also, I feel like their circumstances were a bit different from ours.
Yeah lah, of
I
course
feel
lah.
like really.
For sure.
So if let's say on the topic of like if you either you accept that your parents is like they're gonna be like that,
Yeah.
or you just kind of like break off contact, right?
Yeah.
So does this mean that in the context of a relationship, if you and your partner's parent is really very toxic, then at one point would you just be like, "F it lah, we elope ah"?
I think
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't also, because I feel like you can manage that toxicity of the parent, right? It's just about managing it. Like setting it's the boundaries, right? Yeah. Boundary management. It's just about managing a boundary. You cannot change them, so you change how you react to them.
Yes.
So
agree.
then yours is effectively saying elope without eloping ah.
No, you can still see them.
Would
you
you
can still keep in contact.
would you live with them?
No.
No lah, right?
Anyway, that's a relationship deal breaker for me.
And then
It's
really?
living with the
In-laws.
In-laws is a deal breaker.
if they're toxic ah.
No, even if they're not.
If they're the nicest parents in the world, every
I
day
can't.
make you
I
breakfast.
already said already. I already decided that it's not. It's just because like
You want your own space.
If you're like a newlywed and then you live with your in-laws and maybe you get into a fight or a tiff, you have no space to discuss matters because you don't want to worry your partner's parents, you know. And also like sometimes certain like living arrangements just doesn't work. Like you need space to grow as a couple, I feel. Especially like married life, I think it's going to be wildly different from like just dating. And then to have to manage the in-laws and to create boundaries, that's like too much, I feel.
I think it's perfectly okay to have a deal breaker like that. I think I think a lot of people feel that way about like not moving with in-laws. Because I feel like once you move in, if you move in with your in-laws, then or even if it's your own parents, your honeymoon, your own little nesting, it kind of goes away lah, right? Yeah, you have to kind of, it's a very different life.
I feel like when it begins, when the marriage starts, maybe for a few years, no. But I think as your parents get older, I think I'd be open to the idea of having my parents live with me. But also because I was raised that way, right? Like my grandmother stays with me. Culturally it's been like that. So my parents are chill and they're cool. So like I wouldn't mind. So what are toxic traits that are deal breakers for you guys? For like your partner's parents?
I would say the child rearing thing. Like I wouldn't say there's specific traits, but I would say any trait that's going to impact the way I'm able to raise my children is a red flag.
But to the point where it's a deal breaker.
If there was something I felt very strong about and I felt like they were going to be overbearing on my children, right? You want to be able to like leave your kids with their grandparents. Be like, oh, like spend the day with your grandparents. If I felt like I can't leave my kids with them because they're gonna
Hit them.
yeah, hit them or something, then I
For you know.
yeah, for all I know, I don't know, give them alcohol or I don't know. Then I would be like, yeah, that's
So if your in-laws were like, they believed in like caning the child or like smacking the child on the hand.
well, then I think that's a boundary. That's different. That's a
Right.
boundary thing, right? Because then I would have to set a boundary with my partner because, like we have already covered, it's the partner's responsibility to be the one to set the boundaries with the parents. But if I have a boundary with that and I'm like, hey, I really don't want your parents hitting our kids, then I would expect them to bring that up to their parents and be like, hey, we've decided we're not going to be hitting our kids.
I think if like the parents needs me to have a baby, like that is a deal breaker.
Not toxic.
That's damn toxic.
That's
like
not toxic.
no, there are parents that are like, you're marrying my only son. This is quite common in Chinese families or like some Asian families, right? Where like if you marry the only son, then they assume that you are going to give them kids because it's important to pass the name down generations, right? I feel like that sort of pressure is like what if I don't want kids, and they think that like if you don't want kids, you're being unreasonable because like that means that my name cannot be carried down. I think that's damn toxic.
No, but is it a case whereby a parent who wants to have a grandchild
Yeah.
toxic? I think it's parents who like are
Adamant.
overbearing.
Yeah.
Then I think that becomes a big issue, right?
Okay, maybe to say like they are toxic is a bit like mean. Maybe it's just my personal deal breaker of like, what if it is like my personal deal breaker of like, what if I don't want and that pressure is too much? And then you think to yourself, but I love this person, but I don't think I can be with you if constantly you're asking me if I want to have kids just because your mother wants kids.
Isn't that an issue with your partner then though, if your partner is also the one forcing you to have kids? Because if let's say your partner was like, hey, I know my mom is really overbearing about wanting kids, wanting grandkids, but like that's our decision, it's between us. We can't control our parents, so like just know that like I support you in whatever decision you make, then like would that make you feel better? Or would you still be like, even if your partner supported you but the mom was still like, no, I want grandkids?
So I think that's the difference between like a mummy's boy and like a man that just respects his mother, right? Like the man that just respects the mother can be like, hey, I know my mom is like that, like don't mind it too much, but like I don't think that she can force you to have kids. But maybe like the toxicity of like mummy's boy is like, hey, my mother say that you have to have that lah. Come on lah, you're married to me, right? Expected to have pop babies out of your tummy,
So
right?
the deal breaker is mommy's boys then.
I know, because I do feel like part of it is also like when you get married to a person, like you will call their parents mommy and daddy, right? Ma and pa, what? Because like how some parents will think, during the wedding day they always say, right, oh, I didn't lose a daughter, I gained a son.
Yeah.
Like, do I, then everyone cry, right? Yeah. But then I'm thinking at the point in time, do I want you as my mother or not?
Yeah.
You happy
It's
that
a
you
bit too late for that. It's the wedding day, bro. You should have figured that out before.
Yeah. That's why I say it's a red flag, it's a deal breaker. So I see you raise her like that, I see the way that you treat her, I see how you like, you boss the family around, then I'm like, I don't want you as my mom. I don't want I want to find some other mommy. Have you ever considered like you could potentially be a toxic parent as well?
No, I think you reflect all the traits from your parents.
Right.
I mean, I think it's about working through that awareness of like, okay, I know I don't want to be like that, but I think it'll happen inevitably. Like for example, my dad, like he's pegro, very pegro. He'll do the thing where if I cancel plans or if I don't do something, like growing up, it's silent treatment or like make me feel very guilty about like not going out with the family, make me feel very guilty about certain things. That's just the way he operates. That's the way
does that to me too.
Yeah, he does that to you too, right? Yeah, he's pegro. This is his thing. What has he done to you?
Like when I don't want to go for like lunch.
Yeah.
Or like I like just like never reply him something.
Yeah.
Then he'll be like, fine, don't reply me.
Yeah. So that is his parenting from me as a baby.
All the
And
way.
I do that with my partners too. So it's almost like made them feel guilt. I sometimes want to make them feel guilty about certain things. And it's like, why do I want them to feel bad? But it's like, I realized that's kind of the way I was brought up. Backgroundness, I was ignored a lot, silent treatment. So I'm like that, right? If I make my partner feel like I'm upset with them by just ignoring them. So that's something I've been working through.
But your dad does it because he's trying to get you guys to do something, right?
I don't know what his purpose is when he does that. I think he's just sot and he wants us to know he's sot.
But sometimes he's damn funny lah. When he's
Yeah,
aggro.
but to you it's funny. When it was intense when I was a kid and stuff, like, no, I wasn't really funny. I was like, he's being like this again. Oh, I need to can I make it up to him? Like, that's the way he didn't really talk. So I feel like, is there a chance that that's the way I'm gonna end up with my kids? Perhaps.
Actually, the very reason why I don't want to have kids is that I 100% will be a toxic parent.
Whoa.
That's why I don't want to have kids.
100%?
Yeah, that's what I'll tell people. I think I'll be a terrible mother. That's why I don't want to have kids.
See, I feel like the terrible mother, I don't know. But like, why are you so convinced that you'll be toxic?
Like, even if I fight against like being like my previous generation, right, I will end up like them. Because like, okay, growing up, right, like I feel like, okay, there are these traits that I don't want to carry on from the previous generation. And then I became an adult and then suddenly I'm like, oh my god, I have this trait. Then if I'm a mom, I sure will become like that. Then I just like don't want anymore.
I feel like so many people worry about that. Especially a lot of my female friends and all. Like their fear of becoming a mother a lot of it is linked to, because I feel like I'm going to be a bad mom, or I feel like I'm going to be a toxic mother.
I believe Xuan, I believe her when she says that she'll be a toxic mother. I think Xuan will be a toxic parent when she's in her young mom phase.
Her young mom face.
When she's been
Does Astley saying that now make you just want to have kids and prove him wrong?
Now I'm wondering like what have I done to make him feel that way?
I feel like she'll be a toxic mom during her young mom phase, but then as she grows older, she mellows and like...
No, but the young mom phase is so important. I feel like when your kids are young
That's the
and
developing-
you're young, you should be the most like non-toxic because that's so important. Like when the kids gain autonomy, right, or agency, right, then I mean maybe in your old age you display toxic behaviors, that's fine and forgivable, I feel. But when your kids don't have agency, right, I feel like it's so important to just be a good mom and not have any toxic behaviors and not imprint things on your kids that's gonna be hard to undo in their later years.
How many enrichment classes are you gonna send your kids for?
Yeah, that's the thing I feel.
That's not what being a good mom is.
Yeah, that's not what being a good mom is.
Elisha is ready,
She's
She's ready for
already, yeah,
motherhood.
she-
No, yeah, I mean, like, being a mom is like my number one goal in life. And I think I will be an excellent mom, so
What, zero toxicity?
No, but what I was gonna say is I read a quote once that said, no one will traumatize you more than your parents.
But I think it's about just finding that it's about the boundaries, right? I feel like, yes, you can feel like what they're doing is different or wrong even, but I think it's about the communication and how you communicate it with them that makes it toxic or healthy.
Yeah, I think it's pretty inevitable, especially since like our generation to the next generation, like so much is gonna change because of how fast technology is progressing. That it's inevitable that we will have values that are going to differ than the next generation. And I think the hope, I guess, is just that like we're a more open-minded generation of parents.
Because like we said earlier, right, toxicity is controlling, it's in its behavior, right? It's how it manifests itself.
Yeah lah.
So then that's, at the end of the day, your choice and how you deal with how that manifests.
So if I grow up to become a grumpy old man,
Yeah.
then like of course I'm going to be toxic.
Yeah.
But I keep an open mind.
And you, it's about explaining your perspective, right? And not just, you're grounded. I don't know if that's how toxic parents like, but I didn't grow up with toxic parents.
That's why people say have kids earlier.
Why?
Because then you don't have generation gap. No, legit, I've heard so many times people telling each other like, if you want to have kids, have it now, like earlier. What?
Really?
Yeah.
That's how you avoid the generation gap.
No, yes.
21, pop the baby.
I follow this like YouTuber, right? And then like she talks about having she already has 3 kids. She's like 27 this year. So she loves the fact that like the kids are not like too far apart, firstly, and there's no generation gap between her and the kid.
There is a generation gap,
I mean like
for sure.
I feel like nowadays generation gap can be 10-year difference, or 5-year difference,
Yeah.
really generation gap what?
But I always agree that a younger mother, right, is a little bit better at evolving together with the kid, like with the times, with.
Oh, I disagree
I think
so hard.
you just follow too many Eat, Pray, Love white TikTokers.
This is
Then it's like you get the sense that, oh, my young mother, and like,
Okay, like from personal experience, right? Because, right, okay, my mother keeps telling me the fact that she had me when she was much older makes it very difficult for her to communicate with me. So then it's drummed into my head when I was growing up that, man, if my mother had me when she was younger, maybe she can communicate with me better.
No, I don't think it's a generation gap. I think it's a you thing.
I'm fascinated though, because my mom also had me very old, and she thinks that's to credit to her parenting. Like, she's so glad she waited to have me until she was older. But I think this is a different episode. I think this is, tune in next week. We need to talk. At what age should you have kids?
Okay. Any final thoughts, guys? What do you guys think?
I believe in a good bridge. I believe in a good bridge. Like, it's okay, whatever the family is like, as long as the bridge between your partner and the partner's family is strong. I believe that we can get through anything.
I think toxic parents, red flag, run away. The whole world got a lot more people. There's a lot more men and women in the world that don't have toxic parents. You can find those instead.
my final thought is I love my parents very much. Like, I think they're the best. Thank you, Amma and Appa, for raising me.
What, that makes me want to edit my final thought.
Yeah,
Later my mother scroll back and be like, "Ayo, this guy is so nice to the parents. My daughter just showing me how toxic I am."
Maybe I also love you guys a
我
lot.
爱你，我
I
爱
also love
你
you guys a lot.
爸爸妈妈，我爱你。
It's not the
The toxic children. These are toxic children. It's
not the only failure.
Love bombing!
Yeah,
Love bombing! Love bombing! What toxic!
Is it our final thought? Love bombing toxic.
Yeah, I guess so.
Alright. Nice.
Okay, that's the end of the episode. So like, subscribe, share if you like what we have talked about today, and let us know what else you want us to talk about. See you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.